Life in our quaint suburb of Elmwood had always felt like a dream come true. Nestled on a quiet cul-de-sac, my family enjoyed a reputation of being the perfect all-American household. I am Daniel, a dedicated accountant known for my meticulous nature and steady temperament. My wife, Laura, was a beautiful, vivacious woman, a stay-at-home mom who managed our household with grace and charm. Together, we had 2 children, Jason, our bright-eyed 10-year-old with a passion for soccer, and Lily, our sweet 7-year-old who adored ballet. Our home was a classic 2-story colonial with a white picket fence, a well-tended garden, and an inviting porch where we often sat together on warm summer evenings. The neighborhood was tight-knit, where everyone knew everyone else, and barbecues, block parties, and holiday gatherings were a common occurrence. It was the kind of place where secrets were hard to keep, and everyone seemed to live a life of transparency and trust. For years, I believed I had everything I could ever want. My job provided well for my family, allowing Laura to stay home and be involved in the children's lives. We shared hobbies, dreams, and an intimate connection that seemed unbreakable. From the outside looking in, we were the epitome of a happy family. But as I would soon discover, appearances can be deceiving, and the perfect life I thought I had was about to unravel in the most unexpected ways. The first signs were subtle, almost imperceptible. Laura had always been a social butterfly, but recently, her enthusiasm seemed different, almost forced. She started spending more time on her phone, texting with a frequency that I hadn't noticed before. Whenever I asked who she was talking to, she'd brush it off with a casual, "Just some friends from the book club." I wanted to believe her, I really did. But there were other changes, too. Laura had always been attentive, but now she seemed distant, preoccupied. Our once lively conversations had dwindled to short, perfunctory exchanges. She began going out more often, claiming she needed me time, or that she was catching up with friends. These outings would sometimes stretch late into the night, and when she returned, she'd be evasive about where she'd been. One evening, while we were sitting at the dinner table, I noticed she was wearing a new necklace. It was a delicate, elegant piece, something I knew I hadn't bought for her. When I asked about it, she said it was a gift from a friend, but she wouldn't say who. Her defensiveness caught me off guard and left me with an uneasy feeling. The turning point came on a Friday night. Laura was getting ready to go out again, this time more carefully than usual. She spent extra time doing her makeup, and chose a dress that I hadn't seen her wear in years. As she slipped into a pair of high heels, Jason asked innocently, "Mom, where are you going?" "Just out with some friends, sweetie," she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're seeing a lot of friends these days," I remarked, trying to keep my tone light. She shot me a sharp look, but quickly masked it with another forced smile. "Is there a problem with me having a social life, Daniel?" I shook my head, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "No, of course not, just wondering." That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. After the kids were asleep, I found myself alone in the living room, staring at the clock. It was well past midnight when Laura finally came home. I heard the soft click of the front door and her footsteps tiptoeing through the hallway. I pretended to be asleep, my mind racing with doubts and fears. Over the next few days, I started to notice more inconsistencies. Laura's explanations about where she was going or who she was with didn't add up. She became increasingly secretive, guarding her phone like it held the secrets of the universe. Our once warm and intimate relationship was growing colder, and I could feel her slipping away. Driven by a mix of suspicion and desperation, I decided to investigate further. I knew it was a violation of trust, but I needed answers. One afternoon while Laura was out, I checked her phone. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her messages, but I found nothing out of the ordinary. She was careful, too careful. It only heightened my suspicions. I started paying closer attention to her behavior, looking for any signs that could confirm my fears. Every smile she gave, every laugh that seemed a little too forced, every moment of distraction became a piece of the puzzle I was trying to assemble. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was hiding something, and I was determined to find out what it was. It was a crisp autumn afternoon when I finally got the proof I dreaded. Laura had gone out for another one of her mysterious meetings with friends. This time, however, I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut. I decided to follow her. It felt wrong, like I was invading her privacy. but the need to know the truth overpowered my sense of morality. I waited until she left the house, then grabbed my jacket and keys, making sure to keep a safe distance as I followed her car through the familiar streets of Elmwood. She didn't go to the usual spots where she met her friends. Instead, she drove to a part of town we rarely visited, finally stopping at a small, inconspicuous motel on the outskirts. I parked my car a few blocks away and watched as she got out of her car, glancing around nervously before walking inside. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat echoing the dread that filled me. I knew what I was about to see would change everything, but I had to see it with my own eyes. With shaky hands, I approached the motel and slipped inside. The dingy lobby was empty, save for a disinterested clerk who barely glanced up as I passed. I moved silently down the narrow hallway, guided by a terrible, instinctive sense of where to go. I reached a door slightly ajar and heard muffled voices coming from inside. My stomach churned as I recognized Laura's voice, followed by a man's deep, familiar tones. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of my worst fears. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The sight that greeted me shattered any remaining hope I had held on to. Laura was there, in bed, tangled up with a man I recognized instantly, Chris, her old school friend. They didn't notice me at first, too lost in their passion to be aware of the world around them. The intimacy of their actions was a cruel parody of the love we once shared. My vision blurred with tears, a mix of rage and heartbreak threatening to consume me. "Laura," I said, my voice breaking the sordid silence. They both froze, turning to look at me with wide eyes. Laura scrambled to cover herself, a look of pure horror on her face. Chris simply stared, too stunned to move. "Daniel, Laura began, but her words trailed off into a sob. I couldn't speak. The betrayal was too raw, too overwhelming. Without another word, I turned and left the room. The image of their betrayal burned into my mind. As I stumbled back to my car, I felt a mixture of emotions: rage, despair, disbelief. The woman I had loved and trusted had ripped our life apart. The drive home was a blur. I barely registered the familiar streets and houses passing by. All I could think about was the sight of Laura and Chris in that motel room. I knew our marriage was over, but I couldn't fathom what came next. The weight of the betrayal pressed down on me, suffocating any sense of normalcy. Back at home, I sat in the dark living room, waiting for Laura to return. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. When she finally walked through the door, her eyes red and swollen from crying, I felt a surge of anger so intense it scared me. "Daniel, please let me explain," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Explain?" I echoed, my voice cold. "What is there to explain, Laura? I saw everything." "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she sobbed. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you?" I demanded, my anger boiling over. "How long has this been going on? How many times have you lied to me, to our children?" She sank to the floor, covering her face with her hands. "I don't know. Months, maybe a year. I can't even remember when it started. I was lonely, and Chris, he was there." "That's not an excuse," I spat, unable to contain my fury. "You betrayed our family, Laura. You destroyed everything we built." "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can—" "No," I interrupted, shaking my head. "There's no fixing this. You made your choice. Now I have to make mine." With that, I walked away, leaving her sobbing on the floor. As I closed the bedroom door behind me, I knew there was no going back. Our life together was over, and the road ahead was uncertain. But one thing was clear. I couldn't live with a woman who had betrayed me so completely. The house felt like a pressure cooker, the tension between Laura and me palpable in every room. We moved around each other like ghosts, our interactions stilted and filled with unspoken accusations. The kids sensed the change, their innocent questions about why Mommy and Daddy were so quiet breaking my heart. One evening, after putting Jason and Lily to bed, I knew it was time to confront Laura directly. I couldn't continue living in this limbo, pretending everything was okay. I found her in the kitchen, nursing a glass of wine, her face drawn and tired. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. She looked up, her eyes wide with fear and guilt. "Daniel, I know what you're going to say." "No, you don't." I interrupted, my anger bubbling to the surface. You have no idea what I'm feeling right now. She took a deep breath, setting the glass down with trembling hands. Okay, let's talk. I sat down across from her, the weight of what I was about to say pressing down on me. Why, Laura? Why did you do it? Her eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't find any sympathy for her. I was lonely, Daniel. You were always working, always busy. Chris was just there. That's not an excuse, I snapped, my voice rising. You could have talked to me, told me how you felt, but instead you chose to betray me, to betray our family. I know I did, she said, her voice breaking, and I'm so sorry. But it's not as simple as you think. I leaned forward, my anger giving way to a desperate need for answers. Then explain it to me. Make me understand how you could do this to us. She wiped her tears, taking a moment to collect herself. It started as just talking, you know. He was someone who listened, who made me feel seen. And then, one night, it just happened. And after that, I couldn't stop. I felt a surge of disgust. Couldn't stop? You mean you didn't want to stop? Maybe, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. But I always loved you, Daniel. I never stopped loving you. Love? I laughed bitterly. You call this love? Sneaking around, lying, cheating? If that's your idea of love, then I want no part of it. Please, Daniel, she pleaded, reaching out to touch my hand. I know I've made mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can… I pulled my hand away, the touch of her skin burning like a brand. Counseling won't fix this, Laura. You've broken something that can't be repaired. She slumped in her chair, defeated. So, what now? Do you want me to leave? Do you want to end this? I don't know, I said honestly. But I do know that I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. Laura looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resignation. I understand, and I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, even if it means giving you space. I stood up, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. I need some time to think, Laura, to figure out what I want, what we need. As I walked away, I felt her eyes on me, filled with a longing that I could no longer reciprocate. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The foundation of our marriage had been irreparably cracked, and the road to any semblance of normalcy would be long and arduous. That night, as I lay in the guest room, the silence of the house was a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. I replayed the conversation over and over in my mind, searching for any glimmer of hope, any possibility of reconciliation. But all I could see were the images of Laura and Chris, their betrayal etched into my memory like a scar that would never heal. The days following our confrontation were a haze of anger and hurt. Laura tried to go about her routine, but the tension between us was impossible to ignore. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of her betrayal, and the rage simmering inside me grew stronger. I knew I couldn't just let her get away with what she'd done. I needed to do something. Something that would make her feel a fraction of the pain she had caused me. I spent hours thinking about how to make her pay, how to hit her where it would hurt the most. It was during one of these sleepless nights that the idea came to me. Laura's entire identity revolved around her image in our close-knit community. She was the perfect wife, the doting mother, the friendly neighbor. If people knew the truth, it would destroy her carefully constructed facade. I started gathering evidence, meticulously compiling everything I needed to expose her infidelity. I found emails, text messages, and photos that painted a clear picture of her betrayal. It was a painful process, but every piece of evidence I collected only fueled my resolve. I would show everyone who she really was. My opportunity came sooner than I expected. Our neighborhood was planning a large block party, one of those events where everyone showed up, from the elderly couple down the street to the young families with toddlers. Laura was heavily involved in organizing it, of course, playing the role of the perfect hostess. I knew it would be the ideal time to strike. On the day of the party, I could see the excitement in Laura's eyes as she flitted around, making sure everything was perfect. She was in her element, greeting neighbors with her dazzling smile and effortless charm. Watching her, you'd never guess the deceit that lay beneath the surface. As the party got into full swing, I made my way to the makeshift stage set up for announcements and speeches. The crowd's chatter died down as I stepped up, holding a folder filled with the evidence of Laura's infidelity. My heart pounded, but my resolve was unwavering. This was it. Excuse me, everyone, I began, my voice steady. I have something important to share. Laura's smile faltered as she looked up at me, confusion and a hint of fear in her eyes. The crowd grew silent, sensing the gravity of the moment. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Daniel, Laura's husband, I continued, my eyes locking onto hers. I've always believed in honesty and trust, values I thought I shared with my wife. But recently, I discovered that I was wrong. A murmur spread through the crowd, and I could see Laura's face paling as she realized what was coming. I found out that Laura has been having an affair, I said bluntly, holding up the folder. I have proof here, emails, text messages, photos. Everything you need to see the truth. Gasps of shock and whispers filled the air. Laura's friends, who had always admired her, looked at her with disbelief and judgment. Laura herself was frozen, her eyes wide with horror and betrayal. Laura, I said, my voice cold. You've deceived me, our children, and everyone here. You've lied to all of us, playing the role of the perfect wife and mother while sneaking around behind my back. Tears streamed down Laura's face, but I felt no pity. She deserved this. She needed to feel the same humiliation and pain she had inflicted on me. I'm done pretending everything is okay, I continued. I'm done living a lie. I want everyone to know the truth about you. I threw the folder down on the stage, the contents spilling out for everyone to see. The crowd surged forward, curious and horrified, eager to confirm the scandalous revelation. Laura sank to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, her perfect world crashing down around her. As I walked away from the stage, leaving Laura to face the consequences of her actions, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. She had hurt me deeply, but now she would know what it felt like to be betrayed, humiliated, and cast aside. It was a small measure of revenge, but it was enough for now. Back at home, I poured myself a drink and sat down, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The confrontation had taken a lot out of me, but it was worth it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of control over my life. Laura's betrayal had shattered our marriage, but I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my dignity and starting anew. The aftermath of the block party was a whirlwind. The neighborhood buzzed with the scandal of Laura's affair, and her once perfect reputation was in tatters. She couldn't step outside without facing whispers and cold stares. Even her closest friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone who had deceived them so completely. At home, the tension was unbearable. Laura spent most of her time in the bedroom, avoiding me and the children. Jason and Lily, sensing the turmoil, clung to me for reassurance. It broke my heart to see them confused and hurt by the changes in our family. I tried to shield them from the worst of it, but there was no escaping the reality of our broken home. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I knew it was time for a final conversation with Laura. We needed to address the future, to decide how we would move forward. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the wall, her face a mask of despair. Laura, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady but firm. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying. Daniel, I know I've ruined everything, she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't even know where to start. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the conversation ahead. We can't go on like this, Laura. This isn't healthy for any of us, especially not the kids. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how there's no fixing this. I sat down across from her, maintaining a safe distance. Laura, I loved you. I really did. But you broke something inside me that can't be repaired. Every time I look at you, all I see is the betrayal. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt you or the kids. I was selfish and stupid. And now I've lost everything. There was a long silence between us, the weight of our shared pain hanging heavy in the air. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but resolute. We need to separate, at least for a while. We need space to figure out what comes next. For the sake of Jason and Lily, we need to make this as amicable as possible. Laura nodded, her expression one of resignation. You're right. I don't want to make things harder for them. They deserve better than this. We'll talk to a lawyer and work out the details, I said. But for now, you should stay with your sister. She's close by, and it will give us both some space to think. Laura looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. Thank you, Daniel. for not completely hating me. I know I don't deserve your kindness. It's not about kindness, I replied, my voice firm. It's about doing what's best for our children. They're the only ones who matter right now. We sat in silence for a moment longer, the enormity of our situation settling in. Then, Laura stood up, gathering a few belongings in a small suitcase. She paused at the door, looking back at me with tears in her eyes. I hope one day you can forgive me, she said softly. I hope we can find a way to be civil, for the kids' sake. I'll try, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. But it's going to take time. With that, she left, the door closing softly behind her. I sat alone in the bedroom, the silence overwhelming. The reality of our separation hit me hard, but it was necessary. We couldn't continue living a lie, pretending that everything was okay. We needed to find a way to move forward, to heal, even if it meant doing so apart. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. Jason and Lily had questions, of course, and I did my best to explain that Mommy and Daddy needed some time apart to work through their problems. It wasn't easy, but I reassured them that we both loved them very much, and that they would always be our top priority. Laura's departure left a void in the house, but it also brought a strange sense of relief. The constant tension was gone, replaced by a quiet determination to rebuild my life. I focused on the kids, on work, and on finding a new sense of normalcy. One evening, as I was tucking Lily into bed, she looked up at me with wide, innocent eyes. Daddy, will Mommy ever come back? I smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. I don't know, sweetheart, but no matter what happens, we'll always be a family, and I promise you, things will get better. Lily nodded, satisfied with my answer, and snuggled into her blankets. As I watched her drift off to sleep, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be challenging, but I was determined to navigate it with strength and resilience. For Jason and Lily, and for myself, I would find a way to move forward. The weeks turned into months, and the initial shock of our separation began to settle into a grim reality. Laura and I communicated mainly through our lawyers, working out the details of our separation agreement. It was a painful, drawn-out process, but necessary for both our sakes and the sake of our children. Every meeting, every document signed felt like another nail in the coffin of what we once had. The trial for our official separation was set in late spring. Walking into the courtroom, I felt a mixture of anxiety and resolve. Laura was already there, sitting with her lawyer, looking pale and withdrawn. I tried not to let my emotions get the better of me, focusing instead on the task at hand, ensuring the best possible outcome for Jason and Lily. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, called the court to order. Our lawyers presented their cases, outlining our respective claims and the evidence of Laura's infidelity. It was surreal, listening to the details of our private lives laid bare in such a public forum. The photos, the messages, all the evidence I had gathered were presented, each piece a painful reminder of Laura's betrayal. Laura's lawyer argued that despite her infidelity, she had always been a good mother and deserved joint custody of the children. My lawyer countered, emphasizing the stability I could provide and the disruption Laura's actions had caused in our children's lives. The back and forth was exhausting, each side trying to paint a picture that would sway the judge's decision. When it was finally my turn to speak, I stood up, feeling the weight of the moment. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion, I never wanted this. I never wanted our marriage to end, or for our children to be caught in the middle of such a painful situation. But the reality is that Laura's actions have deeply affected our family. I want what's best for Jason and Lily, and I believe that stability is crucial for them right now. I glanced over at Laura, her eyes downcast. I don't want to take them away from their mother, I continued, but I believe it's in their best interest to stay with me, at least until things settle down and we can establish a new normal. Laura looked up, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Daniel, she whispered, her voice breaking. I know I've hurt you and the kids. I just want a chance to make things right, to be there for them. The judge nodded, taking in our statements with a thoughtful expression. I understand the pain both parties are experiencing, she said, her voice firm but compassionate. My primary concern is the welfare of the children. Given the circumstances, I believe it is in their best interest to grant primary custody to Mr. Williams, with Mrs. Williams having visitation rights. The words hit me like a wave of relief and sorrow. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. Laura slumped in her seat, her face a mask of anguish. The judge continued, outlining the specifics of the custody arrangement and the steps we needed to take to finalize the separation. As the session ended, I approached Laura. Despite everything, a part of me still felt compassion for her. "Laura," I said softly, "this isn't the end. We can still be good parents to Jason and Lily. We need to work together for their sake." She nodded, her eyes red from crying. "I know, Daniel. I'm so sorry for everything. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." We left the courtroom separately, the weight of the judge's decision hanging over us. The following days were a blur of paperwork and meetings, finalizing the details of our separation and the custody arrangement. I moved into a new apartment, close enough to the old house to make the transition easier for the kids. The first night in my new place was a strange mix of freedom and loneliness. The silence was deafening, the emptiness of the apartment a stark contrast to the life we had once shared. But as I unpacked and set up the children's rooms, I felt a sense of purpose. This was a new beginning, a chance to build a stable and loving environment for Jason and Lily. Laura's visits were awkward at first, but gradually, we found a rhythm. She was determined to be a good mother, and despite the pain she had caused, I couldn't deny her that opportunity. We communicated more openly, setting aside our differences for the sake of our children. One evening, after dropping the kids off at Laura's place, I sat in my car, reflecting on the journey we had been through. The trial had been grueling, but it had also brought a sense of closure. I realized that while the road ahead would still be challenging, I was no longer defined by Laura's betrayal. I was a father, a provider, and a man capable of rebuilding his life from the ground up. With renewed determination, I drove home, ready to face whatever the future held. For Jason and Lily, and for myself, I would keep moving forward, one step at a time. The months following the trial were a period of profound transformation. My new life, while still tinged with the sadness of a broken marriage, began to take on a rhythm of its own. Jason and Lily adjusted to the new arrangement better than I had hoped, their resilience a constant source of inspiration. My new apartment, once a symbol of loneliness, slowly turned into a home. I decorated it with the kids' drawings, family photos, and the small mementos that brought warmth and comfort. We established new routines: family dinners, movie nights, weekend outings to the park. Each day was a step toward healing, a small victory in the long journey of recovery. Laura and I worked hard to keep things amicable for the children. We communicated frequently about school events, doctor's appointments, and other aspects of their lives. Our conversations, while sometimes strained, were focused on the kids, ensuring they felt supported and loved by both of us. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I sat on the porch reflecting on how far we had come. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly, a stark contrast to the turmoil of the past year. I realized that despite everything, I had found a sense of peace. I was learning to let go of the anger and betrayal, replacing them with acceptance and a determination to build a better future. Therapy played a crucial role in my healing. Talking to a professional helped me process the complex emotions and provided tools to cope with the residual pain. I also joined a support group for divorced parents, where I met others who had gone through similar experiences. Sharing our stories and offering mutual support was incredibly therapeutic, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this journey. One day, during a group session, a fellow member named Emma shared her story. She was a single mom who had gone through a bitter divorce, but had managed to rebuild her life with grace and resilience. Her strength and positivity were inspiring, and we struck up a friendship that quickly deepened. Emma and I started meeting outside the group, initially for coffee and then for more extended outings. She was kind, understanding, and had a sense of humor that brought much-needed laughter into my life. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I found myself looking forward to our time together. One sunny afternoon as we were walking in the park, Emma turned to me, her eyes reflecting the warmth of her smile. "Daniel, I've seen how much you've grown over these past months. You're a wonderful father and a strong person. I'm glad we met." I felt a warmth spread through me. her words touching a part of me that had been closed off for so long. Thank you, Emma. You've been a great friend, and I appreciate your support more than you know. As time went on, our friendship evolved into something deeper. Emma became a steady presence in my life, someone I could rely on and trust. She met Jason and Lily, and her gentle, caring nature quickly won them over. They adored her, and seeing them happy brought me immense joy. One evening, after a particularly delightful dinner at Emma's place, she looked at me, her eyes full of emotion. Daniel, I know we've both been through a lot, but I feel something special between us. I don't want to rush things, but I wanted to be honest about my feelings. I took her hand, my heart swelling with gratitude and affection. Emma, I feel the same way. You've brought light back into my life, and I'm so grateful for that. Let's take it one step at a time and see where this journey leads us. With Emma by my side, the future no longer seemed daunting. We continued to support each other, building a relationship based on trust, mutual respect, and shared experiences. Our blended family grew closer, the bonds of love and understanding strengthening with each passing day. Reflecting on the past year, I realized how much I had learned from the experience. Laura's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also forced me to reevaluate my life, priorities, and relationships. I emerged stronger, more resilient, and determined to create a life filled with honesty, love, and joy. One afternoon, while we were all at the park, Jason and Lily playing with Emma's daughter, I felt a profound sense of contentment. I watched as the kids laughed and chased each other, their happiness a testament to how far we had come. Emma came over and sat beside me, her hand slipping into mine. Look at them, Daniel. They're so happy. I nodded, squeezing her hand gently. Yes, they are, and so am I. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the park, I knew that this was just the beginning. Life had thrown its challenges my way, but I had faced them head-on, emerging stronger and more determined. With Emma, Jason, Lily, and our new extended family, I looked forward to the future with hope and excitement. Together, we would navigate whatever came our way, building a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities.